Okay, calm down. You got limits, man. You got limits, man. Okay, calm down.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Katie Halper Show. I'm Katie Halper. So excited to be here with you. We have an amazing show for you tonight, and we have a theme, the theme being a lack of free speech, especially when it comes to talking about Palestine, talking about Israel, which is no surprise to people who have watched this show. But it's really important that we highlight these stories and these cases so we can also push back on them and make it so that it's harder to either fire people or censor art, and not easier. So you are part of this. So on tonight's show, we are going to speak to two very special guests. We're going to speak to Maura Finkelstein, who is a tenured Jewish professor of anthropology at Muhlenberg College, and she's been fired basically over an Instagram repost about Zionism, and we'll get into that. And then after speaking to Maura, we're going to be speaking to Rami Younis, who is a Palestinian writer, journalist, activist, and filmmaker. He's the co-director of this great documentary, Lid, which is a science fiction documentary that he co-directed. And that film, Lid, has now been banned in Israel. So before we bring on our guests, just want to remind everyone, please do like the stream, give it a thumbs up. It's a really easy way to help spread the show, help spread the word about the show. It's a really great way to help support the show, and it's free, obviously. Another way you can help us out is by subscribing. So you press subscribe and then the bell. And if you can, of course, please do become Patreon members at patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. Again, that's patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. You will have access to literally hundreds of episodes, extended interviews, extra bonus episodes, early release, et cetera, et cetera. And if you can do only $1 a month, you still make this show happen. We literally couldn't do it without you. And again, that's patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. So we are going to bring on our first guest. Really excited. She's making her Katie Halper Show debut. Her name is Maura Finkelstein, and she is a writer, ethnographer, and associate professor of anthropology up until very recently. She's the author of The Archive of Loss, Lively Ruination in Mill Land, Mumbai, published by Duke University Press in 2019. Her writing has also been published in Anthropological Quarterly, City and Society, Cultural Anthropology, Anthropology Now, Electric Literature, Allegra Lab, more places. And she was nominated for a pushcart. She's also written for the Scottish Left Review, Mondo Weiss, and Al Jazeera. She was a finalist for the Witness Literary Award and was a Tin House Scholar, and was recently the recipient of the 2024 New Directions Award from the General Anthropology Division of the American Anthropological Association. So welcome, Maura.
Hi, it's so nice to be here.
Yes, thank you so much for talking to us. And I'm really excited to be talking to you. This story is really important. I did see you talk to Mark Lamontail, friend of show Mark Lamontail, but it really needs to get a lot more attention. And there was a great piece on it that Natasha Leonard did at The Intercept. But for people who are just tuning in, and because this hasn't gotten the exposure it deserves, honestly, tell us what happened to you.
Okay, thanks for that. So I want to start by saying that this is in the landscape of a lot of faculty, staff, and students at colleges and universities across the US and the world over the past year who have been silenced, suspended, fired in some capacity. And a lot of those stories will never come to light because they're contingent faculty members. They don't have the institutional support of tenure. And so my story is a little weird because I'm supposed to be protected because I'm a tenured professor. So essentially what happened was that over the fall semester, things that I was teaching, the context of Palestine, and things that I was publishing, particularly in an essay in which I said never again means never again for anyone, speaking as an anti-Zionist Jew. The administration at my college found themselves very pressured by students, donors, alumni, most of whom were connected through Hillel International, who put a lot of pressure on the college to fire me because...
And can you, sorry, before you're moving on, just can you explain in like a sentence what Hillel is for viewers?
Yeah, no, thank you for saying that because there's a lot of misconception misconceptions around what Hillel International is. From about 1923 to the early 2000s, Hillel International could be said to be the center for Jewish life on campus. But over the past 20 years, because of Zionist donors and because of its connections to AIPAC, Hillel International has actually become an Israeli outpost in the United States on college campuses and universities. So it's really important that people understand that when Hillel is criticized, it's criticized because it is an explicitly Zionist institution that does everything from sending students to Israel to be connected with the Israeli army, to participate in Hasbara fellowships in which they learn how to come back and be warriors for Israel on campus, to hosting Israel fellows who are former Israeli soldiers who come to college campuses and are sort of a pipeline to getting American Jewish students to move to Israel to join the army, et cetera. So Hillel, they explicitly say that they are a Zionist institution and Israel is at the heart of their work. So it's really important that people understand that Hillel is not a space for Jewish life. It's a space for Zionist indoctrination on college and university campuses. So thank you for letting me clarify that. Yeah. That was sort of where a lot of the pressure on the college was coming from. And we live in a neoliberal world in which, as colleges and universities are defunded in terms of federal support, they rely more and more on private donors. And so my college is just, one of hundreds and hundreds of colleges that needs tuition and big donors in order to function. And so getting pressure from those stakeholders to fire a professor should not be a big deal, but it is, especially at a small college like mine. And so during the fall semester, there were various investigations into what I was teaching and what I was publishing, and this sort of pesky academic freedom idea that we can talk more about whether that's a real thing, sort of protected me, sort of didn't. But essentially what happened is that in mid-January, a student that I had never met, did not know, had never taught, had never encountered, but who had been sort of keeping an eye on my social media feed for quite some time now, filed a complaint against me through the equal opportunity non-discrimination policy, which is something that people might know from like employment law. It means that you cannot be fired based on your race, ethnicity, religion, gender, sexuality, etc. There are all of these protected classes. And this student made the argument that the student identified as a Zionist and that I posted something that was critical of Zionism. And since the student believed that Zionism and Judaism were the same, that I was denying the student access to an education, because if I was going to critique Zionism, that student would not feel safe taking my class. And when I first heard the complaint, I actually thought it was a joke. It was sort of hard to take it seriously, but that single complaint based on a single social media post, which I believe you've seen, led to a 4-month investigation in which I was found by a committee appointed by the Title IX office that handles Title VI, so civil rights issues, and the provost, that I had been found responsible for 4 counts of harassment, online harassment, discrimination, and online discrimination, and was recommended to be terminated.
And just so people know, I mean, something I think is fascinating is, and we've talked about this a lot before, but the language in this complaint, you were basically accused of discrimination based on shared ancestry. Mm-hmm. So they're considering Zionism to be shared ancestry, right?
Yes.
Okay. Which of course is ironically an anti-Semitic trope, right? To conflate being a Zionist with being Jewish. And the people who do that are, like the KKK and really overt, vile racists and anti-Semites use the term Zionist and Jew interchangeably, like the Zionist this, the Jewish that, whatever. And then the other people who do that are like Israel defenders and AIPAC and the ADL.
Right. Exactly.
So, yeah.
And it's interesting when those two sides are actually on the same side, we should be very concerned.
Yeah, it's a sign that something is up. Yeah, exactly. So let's actually, and the press release from the Department of Education about this investigation actually said that you created a potential hostile environment for Jewish students. And again, this was based on repeated reports in a single semester regarding a professor's classroom statements and social media posts that created a potential hostile environment for Jewish students. And the argument was that your conduct had enough of an impact on students' ability to engage in college activities. So what is your response to that?
I think so. There's two different things that are at play here. With the OCR Department of Education complaint, for folks who were paying attention, there were over 100 similar complaints made against colleges and universities across the country. And the interesting thing about the OCR complaint is that you do not have to actually be associated with the college or university in order to make those complaints. So it's not clear I have my own speculation. It's not clear from the report who was making these complaints, whether they had ever taken my classes, whether they were students of mine or not. In the end, the OCR report sort of concluded, in terms of my understanding, that the college had done what they needed to do and, move on. I was never contacted. So I was alerted by my college on January 17th that a complaint had been filed. And then the next week, the internal investigation began. And I didn't hear about the OCR report again until it was published very, very recently. So in terms of that actual investigation, I don't know who was conducting it. I don't know who was spoken to. But my understanding of it is that not only is it separate from what was happening at my college, but I was not found, the report is not going to, make any suggestions in terms of how the college should handle these things. But as far as I understand from reading the report, they did their due diligence and did not find anything that would be drastic enough to take the kinds of measures that my college ended up taking.
So let's take a look at this tweet, which is, I guess, there was a lot of pressure against you and criticism of you, but it seems like the thing that really pushed you over the edge, kind of, or pushed you past the line where they were going to fire you, is a tweet that you shared on Instagram, and it's an Instagram story.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's take a look at this tweet. Okay, so this is Rami Younis, who tweeted, "Do not cower to Zionists. Shame them. Do not welcome them in your spaces. Do not make them feel comfortable. Why should those genocide-loving fascists be treated any different than any other flat-out racist? Don't normalize Zionism. Don't normalize Zionists taking up space." And then he says, "These scum of the earth genocide fans are getting Palestinians fired from their jobs. They are targeting anyone speaking up on Palestine. Don't make them feel comfortable. Don't empower their McCarthyism and hate campaigns. They are racist and have no business near progressive spaces," which is ironic because he says they're McCarthyite, and then look what happens. But you get smeared and basically fired over this. So what is your, how do you see that that call that's being made there that you echoed? What does that mean to you? And what would that have meant as a professor?
Yeah. So I think it's really important. And, part of the work that I've been trying to do for decades now is to, read Palestinian scholars, read Palestinian writers, listen to Palestinian voices in order to help myself understand how we live in a very Zionist country. I, know it or not, I have been indoctrinated in the ways that, we're all indoctrinated to white supremacy and sexism and, homophobia, et cetera, racism. And so I've worked really hard over the past few decades to unlearn a lot of the things that sort of were in the ether as I was growing up, and in terms of advocating for Palestinian liberation. And I don't think that that project is possible unless we're simultaneously calling out Zionism as a white supremacist settler colonial ideology, right? Israel as a settler state has dispossessed Palestinians and has been committing genocide for 76 years. And so when I talk about Palestinian liberation, I also think it's important to be, calling out Zionism and revealing it to be what it is, which is a 120-year-old political ideology that is not at all the same as Judaism, which is what now, 7,585. What year is it?
I don't know. Judaism
is very old. And they're not the same. And so I think that the way in which Zionism has been normalized in the US makes it seem as though it's a cultural, project that's about loving Israel and how beautiful Israel is and how nice it is to have a Jewish state, without addressing the fact that it is because of Zionism that most of us have been watching the most horrific violence imaginable live streamed to us for over a year by Palestinians who are being annihilated in Gaza, and now the West Bank, and now also the Lebanese folks in Lebanon who are, and everybody else in Lebanon who's experiencing ethnic cleansing. And so when I reposted that Instagram post, which interestingly was only the first half of it, I think that the second half is even more clarifying, right? I wish it had been the whole thing. I was thinking about the fact that we live in a country that is very committed to this idea of both sides, as though two equal parties are coming to a conflict that is evacuated of power. And my job as a person, as an anthropologist, as a professor, as a writer, is to find the power in the story and reveal it to be such, which is, this is not a conflict. This is not a both sides story. This is actually a settler colonial state annihilating a colonized and occupied territory and population.
Right. Now, it's interesting because there's another professor who I don't believe is tenured, Shai Davidai. He's an associate professor at Columbia of business, and he's had over 50 complaints of harassment filed against him by various students. But he's also been harassing faculty, and no one really cared at Columbia about his harassment of students who are more vulnerable than faculty. But they finally got upset because he went after some administrators. And he's been temporarily banned from campus, but not suspended indefinitely, and not fired, and not banned from teaching via Zoom, just not allowed onto campus. But you are a tenured professor, and you get fired over basically a post that some people find unsavory. So how do you explain this discrepancy? And I should say, sorry, I didn't say this because I forget that not everyone knows who Shai Davidai is, but he's extremely Zionist, and calls like Students for Justice in Palestine and Jewish Voice for Peace pro-terrorist organizations, and that because Columbia lets them, or used to, because I think they're both banned, but Columbia having let them on campus meant that he could not keep your children safe, Jewish parents out there. Okay.
And I'm not even sure he's banned. I think he's banned from the main campus, but not the business school. I could be wrong.
Okay.
But, I think it's really important to draw attention to the fact that not only has he been actively harassing in ways that make them unsafe Palestinian students at Columbia.
Right. Yeah. It's important to point out. Yes.
Yeah. And he wasn't, sanctioned in any way until staff complained.
Right.
And I think what that draws attention to is that there's two conversations that are going on in higher ed in the US and across the country in general. One is a sort of panic over student safety. And by student safety, this is constantly a conversation about Jewish student safety. And when we say Jewish student safety, we're actually talking about Zionist student safety. And that somehow has been given so much weight that the feelings of some students is seen as more important and more at risk than the fact that, according to the Lancet, at least 400,000 Palestinians have been brutally murdered in Gaza by the Israeli army. And so when we're talking about safety, feeling uncomfortable because your political ideology is being revealed to be the racist ideology that it is versus actual physical violence is not the same. But when we're talking about student safety in the US, we're not talking about the fact that Palestinian, Arab, Muslim, and anti-Zionist students are actively being attacked, threatened, doxxed, harassed. And Davidai is one of those people who is guilty of actually creating unsafe situations for students. But because they are not Zionist students, we're not talking about their safety.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and the only Jewish safety that's important is Zionist Jewish safety. So if you're an anti-Zionist Jew, you can get thrown to the ground. That literally happened to a professor in her 50s or 60s, I believe, at University of Vermont, who was like, I think in the Department of Jewish Studies at one point, and she was thrown on the ground by police. And, several Jewish students have been also arrested, kicked out, physically attacked, as have all of these protesters. But it's just ironic because according to the people who claim to care about Jewish safety, they really, what they mean is a certain type of Jewish safety.
Yeah, I think that was Annalise Orlick at Dartmouth. And
Yeah.
they're, in addition to that danger and violence, we're also talking about, students at Columbia who were sprayed with, skunk spray, and the administration refusing to acknowledge that they are still suffering health consequences from that attack. And so, when Columbia University calls the NYPD to attack their own students, and we're seeing this across the country, but Columbia is one of the more dramatic stories. What do we mean when we talk about student safety?
Right. Yeah, we've had Layla on, who was one of the people who was sprayed by this skunk water. And she's also been harassed, and she's had family members, killed in Gaza. In the West Bank, in Palestine, not in Gaza. And then she has to deal with this, and someone like Shai Davidai, calling her a terrorist, as if it's not enough to deal with the actual, physical violence that's happening in Palestine to her family. And so I'm just curious though, how is it that they were allowed to fire you? Because what kind of protection does tenure provide you with, and what were they able to do to overcome that protection?
Yeah, I think, this is sort of a longer, or this is part of a longer conversation in the US about whether, tenure has a future. And, Texas is, trying to push back on tenure policies, and this idea of, any kind of built-in institutional support for faculty is being eroded. And I think, tenure is a complicated thing because the point of tenure is to create a situation in which what happened to me can't happen, where, the sort of work that we're doing, if it is sort of political or ideologically, controversial in accordance with the way that power operates on the level of the institution, that the college president can't be like, well, I'm a Zionist, I don't like your work, and so you're fired. Tenure is actually supposed to create a situation in which that can't happen, which is also really interesting because if you look at colleges and universities across the country, those kinds of protections are actually keeping, mostly men, but not entirely men, mostly white men, but not entirely white men who have, been, proven to harass, assault students. They keep their jobs because of the world that we live in. Tenure protects them from that. But in my case, speaking out in support of Palestinian liberation and calling a genocide is seen as so, devastating that it would cost me my job. But I think we're going to see this more and more. I think the equal opportunity non-discrimination policy is going to be a tenure loophole, because we even see this at schools like NYU and now UCLA, in which, being written into this policy is Zionist as a protected class, equating Zionist with Jewish in ways that sort of lift the protocols of faculty according to handbooks or statutes or whatnot out of the usual policies and sort of put it in the Title IX, Title VI bucket, in which things are happening that are really unclear. I mean, most of the time in which I was under investigation, I really didn't understand how the policy worked. I didn't understand where I was with the process. It's very opaque. And so my case in particular is with an appeals committee right now. And I think it'll be really important to see what ends up happening now that the elected faculty committee is reviewing my case. But the way that silence and confidentiality sort of sealed the proceedings with me made it so that not only did I mean, I have great lawyers, but not only did I not really understand what was going on, but it was so sealed off from the campus community that I couldn't have faculty on my campus advocating for me because they didn't understand what was happening. This is going to be a really precedent-setting case.
Wow. Well, it's interesting because, there are so many people who have said stuff that I think we would all agree, or I think even some Zionists would agree, if they were honest, are a lot more problematic than what you posted on Instagram. So here's this one professor, Amy Wax, who is a professor at the University of Pennsylvania Law School, who said during the interview, "I don't think I've ever seen a Black student graduate in the top quarter of the class, and rarely in the top half." She also said that hold on, let me read this other thing. Where's the other? She also said our country will be better off with more whites and fewer non-whites. So speech like that is protected, but saying that Zionism is racist is basically the suggestion is that it's anti-Semitic. And so I guess people would say someone like you is a self-loathing Jew, or whatever. I get called Capo Katie. People love that. That's great. I mean, just to give you people a sense of how odious some of these people are, I literally because I'm working on a documentary about Holocaust survivors speaking out against the genocide, who are, like you pointed out, like you made this point, never again is never again for anyone. And I released a short of this woman, Marion Ingram, who's been protesting outside of the White House for over a year now. And I released this video, and someone in the comments literally called her because she said that October 7th, she didn't see October 7th. She did not consider that a Holocaust. She knows that Israel calls it that. And to her, she sees the what's happening to Palestinians resembles the Holocaust in her opinion. And a person in the comments called her a capo. It's like one thing to call me a capo, but you're actually this young person who was not even born, she's older than me, but was not born during the Holocaust, is actually going to call an actual Holocaust survivor a capo. I mean, just these are the same people who claim to really respect survivors and be motivated by the lessons of the Holocaust. But of course, as we know, for some people, and way too many people, never again really means never again for Jews.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think, there's so many things that could be said about that story, and it breaks my heart. And I had to, in the fall, I had to look up capo. I hadn't actually been called that before. And now it's my
regular
number one internet slur. But I think, over the past few decades, over probably more than 100 years, but specifically over the past few decades with the war on terror and the way in which our media landscape, whether it be corporate news media or whether it be movies, TV shows, the sort of circulation and recirculation of the Arab as terrorist, as the way in which we've totally normalized Islamophobia in this country. We've so dehumanized Palestinians, Arabs, Muslims that we can be watching a live stream genocide and our, leaders, whether they be our political leaders, our, university leaders, et cetera, have so dehumanized these communities that it's, easy to open up the news today and see an article. I think CNN was talking about how, Israeli soldiers are, dealing with the trauma of having, genocided Palestinians,
right.
And we have to worry about their mental health. But when you have a community, you have a population that's been so dehumanized, then for someone like me or someone like a Holocaust survivor to speak out on behalf of humanity is seen as a complete betrayal of this project, in which what we're seeing with Zionism is that, some Jews have been brought into the white supremacist project, which on college and university campuses is an anti-equity project. And so the same figures like Christopher Rufo, who are trying to get rid of critical race theory, who are going after gender and sexuality studies departments, who are attacking DEI, they're now also the champions of the Jews. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. But this is a very strange partnership.
Right. or like people like John Hagee, right? So at the Zionism, at the Israel United for Israel thing, you had Schumer, you had Hakeem Jeffries, and then you had Pastor John Hagee, who says that Hitler was sent by God to get the Jews back to the Holy Land, where we can convert or be killed, which is fascinating. But I want to ask you about your kind of political conversion, because I believe you were raised as a Zionist. So can you talk about if you had like a wake up moment or an aha moment, or how you arrived at the anti-Zionist position that you're at today?
Yeah, I actually wasn't raised as a Zionist. I was never a Zionist, but I was raised within Zionism. So I grew up receiving a Jewish education in the 1990s. And, my parents and I haven't always seen eye to eye, and we definitely exist on different parts of the political spectrum, but they've never identified as Zionists, and they've never been to Israel, and that's not a project that they're invested in. But living in the United States, it's very hard not to have some kind of connection to Israel if you're not thinking critically. But I did go to Sunday school and evening Wednesday classes when I was training to get my bat mitzvah. I have, over a decade of a Jewish education alongside my public school education. And I was being taught Hebrew by former Israeli soldiers. And I was learning about how being Jewish is about feeling connected to Israel. And when I got bat mitzvahed, half my friends and family planted trees in Israel in my name because I was, an environmentalist as a young child. And I didn't really know what that meant or how I was supposed to feel about it, except that it felt alienating. I never understood why I was supposed to feel connected to this country on the other side of the world that seemed to just be steeped in violence. And I actually had just this really wonderful teacher who changed my life in high school, a history teacher who taught a modern Middle East history class in a high school, which is kind of amazing. It was like 1996 and everybody was riding the high of the Oslo Accords and the peace process.
Right, yeah.
And he organized his class. I think now the kids call it live action role playing in the class. It was,
LARPing, is that what it is?
Yeah. But he organized the class as a, peace process. And so he assigned students to different countries or entities based on power. So 10 students represented the United States, 8 students represented Israel, 3 students represented Jordan, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't know how Mr. Biedron knew that he needed to change my life, but I was the single student who was assigned to Palestine. And so in 1996, I'm 16 years old. I didn't really have the internet. And I was just like trying to learn as much about Palestine as I possibly could. So at the end of the semester, I could go in and get an A because I wanted to be an A student. And the more I read, the more I realized that, this notion of Palestine that I had been taught in my, religious education was complete nonsense. And this sort of fantasy of Israel that was being given to me from my Jewish synagogue where I grew up was complete nonsense. And Mr. Biedron gave me the tools to learn and set myself free. And I've been trying to learn as much about Palestine as I can ever since.
Oh, is he still with us?
He is not. And
okay.
I did get a chance.
Don't get him in trouble.
I did once have the opportunity to tell him that he changed my life and is probably the reason that I wanted to be a teacher. So I'm glad I had that.
That's amazing. That's great. Yeah. So as an okay. And then you went to Palestine, right? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I received a fellowship to go to Palestine with a group of other academics in the summer of 2018 and spend time in East Jerusalem and the occupied West Bank. It was a program that was designed mostly to connect American academics with Palestinian academics in the West Bank, and also to sort of learn about life under occupation. And so every day we traveled in and out of the West Bank through checkpoints. We went to colleges across the West Bank and learned about all of the ways in which repression operates on various different levels. Folks who are paying attention to the sort of like nuanced discourse coming out of the Gaza genocide might hear the term scholasticide. And that's, every university in Gaza has been destroyed. But even before this past year, colleges and universities in Gaza and the West Bank are subject to all forms of Israeli control and crackdown. So when we're talking about academic freedom, we should be talking about that.
Right. Well, speaking of that, you wrote an academic essay entitled "May Your Classroom Be a Sea Change: Further Thoughts on Teaching About Palestine." And in this essay you write, "Though I believe it is impossible to decolonize a colonial institution, anthropologists can and should build movements that are transformative in the spaces where we hold the most creative power and long-term impact, our classrooms." So can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I wrote that in 2021, I believe, and it was a follow-up to an essay that I wrote about first going to Palestine in 2018. And as an anthropology professor, the sort of core of our methodology is that we situate ourselves in a space and think about how that space, that perspective forms knowledge. So we're not interested in objectivity. We're not interested in both sides. We're interested in how is knowledge and information built from the communities in which we find ourselves. When I teach about India, which is where I did long-term research, or when I write about mill workers in Bombay, that's the perspective that I'm not thinking about the British perspective under colonialism. I'm not thinking about the, mill owners' perspective when I'm thinking about mill workers. And similarly, I bring the same sensibility to when I teach and write about Palestine. And specifically in the classroom, I'm teaching Palestinian academics, I'm teaching Palestinian writers, and I am trying to change the way that the United States has created a situation in which Palestinians are fundamentally untrustworthy narrators of their own experience. We are not seeing Palestinian voices in any mainstream spaces. We are seeing Israeli Zionist and, liberal conservative voices telling us about what is happening in Palestine instead of allowing Palestinians to tell their own story. And I think, anthropology is not a perfect discipline, but in the way that I practice it, I feel like that is one small step in trying to change the way in which power and narrative work.
And by the way, what did you see in Palestine that made a real impression on you and your understanding of Palestine and colonialism?
Yeah, there's so many stories, and I think, it's almost a cliche for people to go to the West Bank and come back and say, Hebron was the worst place I've ever seen. But Hebron was the worst place I've ever seen. It is the only time in my life that I've ever been scared, and it was because Israeli settlers were yelling at my group and threatening my group while Israeli soldiers laughed and watched. And, it was like a shadow. It was a drop of what it means to live every day in a situation in which you have no rights, you have no protection, you are, an occupied population. I will never know what that feels like, but the chill of being in Hebron and seeing the structural violence and the way in which, Palestinians were constantly subjected to violence and dehumanization by, what we know to be one of the most powerfully armed militaries in the world, giving settlers full permission to enact whatever violence they wanted. And I didn't need to see that to know what was happening in Palestine, but I think I did need to have that story to take back to my students or whoever I was talking to just say, I've seen this. I know in my body what it felt like to be there. And, I don't know how I feel about the practice of bearing witness and the necessity of it, but it definitely motivated me in my work.
Wow. And what kind of support have you received from your community?
For those of us who have been paying attention this past year, it's probably been a very clarifying year. I've lost people and I've gained people, and there's been a lot of, to repeat the same word, there's been a lot of clarity. But I will say I feel incredibly supported, and I think the most supportive thing that people can do right now is to just keep talking about Palestine. I think we have to, regardless of the exhaustion and regardless of the hopelessness and regardless of the fact that every day we are watching worse and worse atrocities. Every day I say, this is the worst thing I've ever seen. And the next day it's the worst thing I've ever seen. And I think that, the thing that we have to do now is to not let the sort of fascist impulse of those in power replacing information with their own will. We have to keep reiterating the things that we're seeing, the things that we know that are true, and not let the sort of hopelessness of this past year get in our way. Because I also have been, involved in various ways with spaces fighting for Palestinian liberation for several decades now, and I have never seen the kind of global support for Palestine that I have seen. So if there's any shred of hope, it's that. And I think all of us are safer if we just keep talking about Palestine and we keep reiterating what we know is true, which is Israel is committing genocide, and it's the most horrific thing that I've ever seen.
Yeah. And people, I mean, there's like just no line. I mean, some people, I've seen some Zionists, because I keep thinking, like, if I were a Zionist, I feel like I'd be saying, okay, Israel, like, obviously, Zionism, the occupation is inherently violent. But I still think that I'm surprised that more people aren't saying, can you guys not, like, kill as many kids and bomb as many refugee camps and bomb as many hospitals? Like, can't you, like, just kill Hamas people and defend Israel as a democracy, all that bullshit. But like, I'm actually surprised that more people aren't doing that. Not that I wouldn't be criticizing them for doing that, but I'm just surprised that people aren't more like desperate to cover their asses morally.
Yeah. And I really think it goes back to the dehumanization of Palestinian, Arab, and Muslim communities, in which, liberal Zionists and super conservative Zionists, the only way that you can be a Zionist is if you do not think that Palestinians are fully human. And if you believe that, you can say they're all Hamas, they're all a big, block, and we're just trying to keep Israel safe, which is absolute nonsense. But I really think that Zionists are revealing, regardless of how they understand themselves on a political spectrum, they are revealing the way in which their ideology is a monstrous ideology and it can't be redeemed.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on, and also I would love to talk to you again, because I actually really want to get into how we apply that the message that you tweeted on it, that you put on Instagram, because I think that's an important discussion to have, and what that would look like.
Yeah, I'd love to.
And there was one more thing I was going to ask you, and I can't remember now. I don't want to end on that note. That's not a good note to end on, me forgetting something. What are you working on? Are you working on anything right now?
I am working both on my own writing and with an incredible group of scholars and thinkers and activists on various projects that are trying to show how Hillel is a Zionist institution and not the Center for Jewish Life. So there are a lot of initiatives right now that are trying to draw attention to that. And I am really hopeful that the knee-jerk reaction of like, oh, it's anti-Semitic to criticize Hillel is going to transform just in the way that we need to draw attention to the fact that criticizing Zionism is not just what we have to do, but it is not only is it not an anti-Semitic project, because anti-Zionism is a Jewish construction, but that we have to do that. We have to decouple these projects. So that's what I'm interested in right now, where a lot of my attention is.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a moral imperative, but also like it's out of safety for, like, if talk about Jewish safety, like it's not safe for people to think that this is Jewish identity, that like Jewish identity means live streaming genocide or supporting the genocide that's being live streamed. I mean, people need to wake up to this. And I keep being struck by when I see videos and on Twitter I'm really struck by all the parallels I see with the Holocaust. Just the, like, first of all, the comparing the people to like rodents and rats, like the dehumanization, the fact that people are not doing anything, just standing by. I mean, we are going to look back. I mean, many of us are looking now and saying, how is this happening? Stop doing this. We're protesting, whatever. But, you know, people will look back at this with horror at the fact that people were not all out in the streets and were complicit or apathetic. And it's just very, you know, disturbing and troubling.
Yeah, it's really disturbing. And I hope that this all ends soon. I hope that the Zionist project ends soon. And I hope, you know, not necessarily optimistically, that the world will account for and apologize to Palestine and Palestinians. I'm not hopeful, or I'm not optimistic, but I'm hopeful that that will happen.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And we'll make sure to link to your Twitter. And oh, wait, last thing. Yeah, I want to ask you about this tweet. So you tweeted out FFS VP, stop asking me for money and my vote and instead stop sending Israel bombs to genocide Palestinians. I hope the Democrats are haunted by the horror they have funded, supported for the rest of their lives. The POTUS administration has sent approximately $18 billion to Israel, and the vice president and Harris has raised over $1 billion, and they have the audacity to ask for more money so they can continue burning Palestinians alive. May POTUS and VP never know a moment of peace. Yeah. So I can guess that who you won't be voting for. And you're in a swing state. You're in a swing state, right?
I'm in New York, and so I'll get a lot.
Right. You're just teaching
about how my vote doesn't matter. Okay. I don't think it would matter where I live. You know, genocide is my red line, and everything. I mean, this is not a single issue voting question. This is about everything. This is about humanity. This is about human rights. This is about women's rights, children's rights. This is about the environment. It's about everything. But I also, you know, one of the things that is just blowing up all my group chats right now is that when the Dems message us, me and my folks, and ask us for money and support, and we say, you know, no vote until there's an arms embargo, they have no answer for us. Sometimes it's like, good luck, you know, supporting Trump, or, you know, I hope that, you know, good luck to your family in Lebanon, or what. I mean, there's these horrible, snarky responses, but they do not actually have an answer to account for the fact that Kamala Harris is not listening to her constituents. And in this country, we have a right and a far right party. And, you know, I can't vote for someone who is actively supporting a genocide and has absolutely nothing to say about it, in addition to all of her other policies that I don't support.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Maura, and best of luck, and keep us posted on what's happening and anything we can do to support you in this case, in your case. And yes, I mean, are you hoping to be rehired? Is that the right term for it? Rehired?
I'm hoping to be reinstated.
Reinstated, okay.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens.
All right. Well, good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye. Okay, that was great. And everyone watching, thank you so much for watching. And we are going to bring on our next guest. If you haven't already liked it, please like the stream. Also, please follow Maura on Twitter. We'll add her Twitter to the description, the YouTube description. But we're going to bring on our next guest. And again, this relates to the whole theme of free speech, freedom of expression, censorship, and the fear of the truth, honestly. That's not to sound corny and pretentious, but really it is the fear of truth, because we are going to bring onto the show, he's coming back onto the show, Rami Younis, who is a Palestinian filmmaker, writer, journalist, and activist from LID. And he also served as a parliamentary consultant and media spokesperson for Palestinian member of Knesset, Haneen Zouabi. He is the co-founder and manager of the first ever Palestine Music Expo, an event that connects local Palestinian music scene to the worldwide industry. And he was the host of the Arabic language daily news show, On the Other Hand. So welcome, Rami.
Hi, Katie. Good to be back. Good to be back.
Thanks for coming back.
Yeah.
So we had you on before when your film was screening in New York. It is still screening, But the difference now is that it's not going to be screening in Israel. Can you tell us why?
So yeah, the film is not a screening in the U.S., but it won't be screening in its homeland, in Palestine and Israel. So on October 10th, we were supposed to have a screening at a theater in Jaffa called the Saraya Theater. Hours before the event, days before the event, a couple of days before the event, the Israeli Minister of Culture sends a letter to the Israeli Chief of Police demanding that they intervene and stop the screening or ban the screening because it might incite unrest in mixed cities. That's according to him. Obviously, the problem was that it was my film. The problem was that it was our executive producers, Roger Waters, and they did not want to have a film about the Nakba, the Palestinian catastrophe that shows what happened in 1948 in my hometown, to be screened. So anyway, but that day, October 10th, I'm on my way to the theater. I know the tensions are high, and the theater manager calls me and says, listen, an Israeli intelligence officer wants to talk to you. So that's the Israeli equivalent of the American FBI. Well, I said no. I mean, why? It's like, I don't just like talk to people who want to talk to me. So I said no.
You're very Hollywood. You don't just talk to anyone.
I'm a diva.
They gotta book your through your person. Yeah.
I mean, Katie, you know me. I'm a diva. I mean, you want to talk to me, just like talk to my people, you know?
Exactly.
So anyway, and then he calls again, but this time he wants to see the film so that he can get this, pre-approve it. So what do you think I said? I said no. And then I said that, but if the guy wants to watch it so much, I mean, I'll be happy to buy him a ticket because I know Israeli police doesn't pay much. I buy him a ticket. I'll sit next to him to the screening. I'll buy him a beer afterwards, and I'll answer, I don't know, whatever he wants me to answer. We can have a lively debate on cinematic metaphors in the film if he wants to. I mean, whatever. But I mean, I'm not gonna go along with a police state. And obviously, they decided to ban the film, ban the screening, and this, quite surprisingly, actually, obviously there was like an incitement campaign against me, smearing campaign against me in Israeli media. But I have been seeing other media outlets in Hebrew supporting us and going against the government. This is literally unheard of. I mean, I'm shocked in the middle of a genocidal war to see Haaretz editorial on last Monday in favor of us and totally against the minister and the Israeli government. Seeing mainstream news shows going against the minister and in support of us. So it felt like it was kind of shocking. However, all this aside, we are yet to have a public proper screening in Palestine of the film. Now, as a Palestinian citizen of Israel, I want to screen this film to my community. Lod nowadays, Lod is called Lod in Hebrew. It's a city in Israel. So if I want to screen it to my community there, the Israeli authorities, especially now in times of war, pretty much can do whatever they want to just prove to all of us that Israel is the only democracy in the Milky Way galaxy. You know, when Americans talk about shared values, you know, when Blinken talks about shared values, I just want to, where does he get off? I mean, what shared values? Israelis don't even know what a democracy is, you know?
Well, to be fair, neither does
US, I just heard myself. So I take it back.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, Israel is definitely not a democracy.
More overtly, I would say, like it's more explicit than it is in the United States. Yeah. But of course, part of our non-democracy is the way we fund genocide despite the will of the people, right? Like, because we know that most people don't want this to be happening. And well, you know, it is ironic because this film talks about, you know, basically, well, it talks about the Nakba, it talks about occupation, and then the very reaction to the film is showing the systematic oppression of Palestinians that's described in this film, in this documentary. So we'll talk more about the documentary, but let's show people a trailer of this documentary, which is really excellent. by the way. I highly recommend it, and I have seen it a couple times. 1 second. We're getting that ready in 1 second. And by the way, I do want to say that the place that Israel has a film and theater review board council, which was created by an October 1927 ordinance during British rule. And that 1927 ordinance is used to block Palestinian films that have an anti-Israel narrative. And in early 2023, following his appointment by Prime Minister Netanyahu, this guy, Zohar, this minister, pledged to withhold state funding from individuals, institutions, and venues platforming art that, quote, defames Israel, end quote. If you were so secure in your democracy, I don't know what the fear would be. I don't know why they'd mind. But anyway, let's take a look at this trailer.
زمان أنا كنت كتير جميلة وكنت كتير مشهورة. كانوا يجوا ناس من كل العالم لحتى يزوروني. أنا كنت المدينة اللي ربطت فلسطين مع العالم. بس فجأة قامت لقيامي.
إنه يطلع من الدار يومين ويجي يلاقي الدار مسكونة وأنت ما تقدرش تدخل. بدي أشوف إيش بتكون الجواب تاع أي واحد في العالم.
يا شباب انضموا إلينا، يا شباب انضموا إلينا، بيوت اللب غالية علينا، بيوت اللب غالية علينا.
المعاناة والنكبة ما انتهتش بال 48، استمرت بمصادرة الأراضي، هدم البيوت.
سياسة التخطيط الإسرائيلية منذ النكبة حتى اليوم تعمل كل جهودها حتى تشوه الحيز التاريخي الفلسطيني وتعيد بناء المعاني لهذا المكان.
الشجرة هاي فيها كمان ليمون، كمان بردقان وكنابل. قعدنا كل يوم يرتم علينا شغلة وخلينا عشان نتذكر شو مرقت البلد، شو مرقنا. ما بدي أمرق نكبة تانية.
أنا عمري آلاف السنين وكل شي بتغير. مش عم بقول إني حابة أصير يوتوبيا ومدينة كاملة مكملة. بدي أبنائي وبناتي المنفيين يرجعوا لي. بدي أزدهر كمان مرة. قصة اللد هي قصة فلسطين.
So what does that mean that the story of Lid is the story of Palestine? And talk about how this film incorporates science fiction into it.
We use Lid to tell the story of Palestine, even though what happened in Lid actually was more severe than anywhere else in Palestine. There were a lot of massacres and a lot of erasures, expulsions. But what happened in Lid was, other than the massacres, also the fact that they completely erased the city. They completely erased the city after the Nakba to prevent refugees from coming back. So, and well, in a way, that's the story of Palestine. You know, Palestine was erased. If you go if you look at the map of what used to be historical Palestine and where the Palestinian towns and villages used to be, you see that they planted forests. Israel had planted forests where those villages used to be, so that they covered the ruins of these villages that were whose population were expelled. So yeah, it is the story of Palestine. And even though I'm from Lid, and we wanted to tell the story of my hometown with Sarah Emma Friedland, who grew up as a Zionist Jew. And later on, she decided to, when she uncovered the truth, she decided to use this film to make this film with me and just tell the truth to her community, especially in the U.S. and we use Lid to tell the story of Palestine in that sense.
Yeah, and it's interesting because what the film does is it has scenes that it's obviously partially a documentary that captures reality, and then it has this almost aspirational aspect of it where you use animation to show scenes of what it would have looked like, could have looked like without the Nakba.
Yeah, so Sarah and I are huge science fiction nerds, and we, while working on this, I think years into the 2 or 3 years into the project. I mean, as you know, documentaries, Katie, take a long time, take a very long time. And 2 or 3 years into the project, we both realized that we were making a documentary that neither of us would want to watch.
Oh,
really? It was too straightforward, you know. It was another. I'm sorry to say this, but it was yet another, tragic Palestinian story. God knows we have enough of those. And we wanted to create something that's a bit different, not just in the, for the sake of being different, but also for trying to be a little bit maybe hopeful and also use imagination. I mean, because if there's one thing that, the occupation can take away from you is your ability to imagine. And so we started working on this. We decided to create an alternate reality in which, the atrocities of 1948 never happened. And we ended up creating a reality in which everyone from the river to the sea is equal. Can you imagine that? Imagine that radical idea. And this is the idea that the Israeli government wants to ban. This is what they don't want people to see. This is just beyond me. You're scared of this? You're scared of a simple film made by an American Jew and a Palestinian citizen of Israel that dares to imagine an alternate reality in which where everyone is free. So obviously this is beyond moronic. With the ban, they've actually given us, in my view, a huge PR gift.
Yeah.
Because now I get to, be on your show and in other places. Just today, we got a press release from PEN America. PEN America issued a press release in full support of us and against the Israeli government, against banning the film. So how do you look now? How do these guys look now, And one more thing on the ban, Katie. You watch the film, so you know that another science fiction element to it is that the city is a character. The city is a living character. She speaks. She shares her memories. She tells us the story. She walks us between these realities. She takes us to the past, to the exile, to the future, to the present. And the fact that the city has a voice that they try to silence by banning this film, well, guess what? Now everyone will hear her voice.
Right. Yeah, they're amplifying it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, by the way. Thank you for that. Yeah. I've thanked the Israeli Minister of Culture a couple of times. And
I know you should give them a producer credit. And also you should put or distribution credit, maybe post-production, some kind of post credit. You should also put when you put the laurels, is that what they're called? Like the signs of the awards you win, it should be banned by the Israeli government.
We should probably do this because I don't want to credit them as distribution or whatever, because then I have to pay them.
Oh, no, yeah. Don't do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. And tell people more about Lid historically, and then what is Lid like today, and what is your relationship to Lid today?
So I was born and raised in Lid. Today I live in Haifa. Right now I'm doing this interview with you from New York. This week we started another U.S. tour with the film. This time we're focusing on universities in the East Coast. Next semester we'll be focusing on universities in the West Coast. My relationship to Lid, I would say this is kind of a love-hate relationship. You know how you love your home, whatever what, even though you hate it so much. This is my relationship with Lid. Lid is a very, very I think people have so many reasons to be sad and depressed nowadays. So without going into too much details about how today's Lid is let's just say that you feel the occupation, you feel the creeping Nakba of 1948 in Lid. even though it's within Israel, even though it's like 5 minutes from the national, like, international airport, even though it's like 15 minutes from Tel Aviv. It's a marginalized space, inflicted with crime and poverty. Palestinians there suffer from house demolitions. I mean, nobody really knows the exact numbers, but in Palestinian neighborhoods, around 70 to 80% of the houses that were built there were built without building permits, because there are no approved I don't know what's the correct term in English, but like zoning plans, so that the city uses these as a political whip. I mean, okay, so you weren't given a building permit to build your home, even though that's your land, because we don't have an approved plan for the whole neighborhood, so we can come later on and demolish your home, whatever you want. Can you imagine most of the population living in such conditions? So yeah, so this is lit. And nowadays it's, I mean, you're gonna have to just watch the film. I don't want to give away too much, but add to that settlers. I truly believe that settlers they started moving to Lid more than 20 years ago, with the open goal of Judaizing the space, make it more Jewish. And we talk about, which, I mean, seemingly there's nothing wrong with that, to be honest. But if you dig deeper and you understand the true causes, the true reasons for this, it gets terrifying. By Judaizing the space, you're talking about an ultra-nationalistic religious population, settlers that were evicted from Gaza almost 20 years ago. Now they want to move into Lid to make the Palestinians, go away from the city, essentially. Right. Again, for some sort of a creeping Nakba again. So with that, we have a growing settlers population in Lid that's trying to push away the local Palestinian community. And add to that poverty, add to that a very racist establishment, add to that wartime, you end up with quite a depressing reality. But again, we try to imagine a reality in which these things just don't happen. And it was so hard. It was so easy. Do you know why, Katie?
Why?
We just imagined a world without Zionism, where both Jews and Arabs lived happily ever after.
Right.
Yeah.
Which was happening before. I mean, one of the big myths is that one of the big Zionist myths is that this is a cultural clash about, two religions that could just never live side by side. And it would be a nice idea, but it's utopian. And of course, they don't even acknowledge the fact that, like, they're Palestinians who are Christian, they're Palestinians who are Muslim, they're, Palestinians who are Druze, whatever. But that is something that people like to kind of hide the colonial origins of this relationship by making it seem like they're just two populations that can never get along.
I mean, it's just one of the Zionist lies. To me, the most, I mean, there's a lot of audacity in these lies, but to me, the most brazen is that Zionists moved to Palestine, to make the wilderness blossom.
Right.
Well, that's a despicable
desert bloom.
Yeah. That's just like a despicable lie, because, I mean, I'm sorry, but my grandfather was a person. My grandmother was a person. And they were living there. And in 1948, and again, we touched this on the film too, Lid was a major economical hub for Palestine. The Palestinian society was in the middle of an urbanization process. And that's why they declared this vicious war on Palestinian cities. Haifa, Jaffa, Lid. They essentially emptied up the cities of its original populations because we were in that place, because Palestinians had factories, because we had a functioning, quite advanced economy at the time. So whenever you hear anything about Israel from a Zionist, know that it's rooted in propaganda. And I'm not saying take my word for it, just go and do a little digging for yourself. You'll find out the truth. And that's to me, this is like the most frustrating thing. It is very easy to know the truth. It is just so easy to know the truth. But unfortunately, not enough Americans try.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it is easy, but you have to really know, like, part of it is that you have to know you're being lied to, and that's almost the hardest part, right? Because if all you hear is propaganda, you don't even realize it's propaganda.
Well, I mean, if I hear from someone that, you know, my taxpayers' dollars are being sent or used to kill babies, even though I may not know anything about that, I would do a little bit of digging myself. And then I would find out that this is not a foreign issue. This is a huge domestic issue. It's a huge American domestic issue. And I'm still shocked how not all Americans understand this.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Someone wrote in the comments, actually friend of show, Nate Newburn, and they planted, he's talking about the Jewish
eucalyptus.
Yeah, they planted European crops that use way too much water and had to steal water to do so. It's called green colonialism.
Exactly. Guess who? Where they stole the water?
You guys?
Yeah.
Your family? Yeah.
Not my family, but maybe my family. I don't know. My grandfather is dead. I would have asked him.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let's show another scene, a couple more scenes of the film, and then we're going to talk about what's happening today where you are. So this scene is one of the characters recalling what happened to him as a young boy. It's a very moving, upsetting recounting of this. So let's take a look. And his name is Isa.
Isa Fanous, yeah.
This tree has lemons, oranges, and grenades. Every day they would throw something at us.
Wait, I don't think this is I wrote out the time code. So this would be, sorry, what did I 6:44 to 8:07. Do you have that?
I know.
This is me here. This is Samir al-Aboudi. He was with me. When the Israeli army took us to Dimash Mosque to remove the dead bodies, the decomposed bodies smelled really bad. Dreadful. A week or two after the massacre, they took us in the Israeli army vehicles. Me, Samir Aboudi, Rashid Fanous, Khalil Abu Judub. No, Khalil al-Bele, Tulid. We weren't captives, we were children. Like me, maybe a little older. I was probably the youngest. They took us there, dropped us off. Take out the bodies. Pulling. The bodies were falling apart, rotted. The smell was horrendous. We'd take the bodies out, and Israeli soldiers would burn them. At the end of the day, they would drive us back home. They took us 2 days in a row.
So that is one testimony. And then we have another testimony from an Israeli soldier. Let's take a look at this.
I want to describe what I saw inside the mosque. There were women, men, and children in there. A few were injured, and I don't know from what. A few were injured. Many were sitting against the wall, terrified, but looking at me. I remember that a small girl was sitting next to the wall, around 12 years old. She was holding her sister in her arms. She hugged her and was waving her other arm like a pendulum, with spread fingers as if to say, "Don't shoot." And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know anything. I remember this sight and I stormed outside. Then, in front of the mosque's door, there was a wall, and in the corner sat a local Palestinian person. I remember his face. He had a round face. He was very injured. I don't know from what. That was the first time I was that close. And I saw his eyes, terrified, confused. I have no words. I was confused, but it appeared that in his eyes, I was the murderer. That's what he saw in my eyes. Then he looks at me and says in Yiddish, Obrachmones, meaning in Hebrew, have mercy on me. It reminded me of everything that we faced in exile, the pleas of mercy from Jews throughout generations, and I stormed outside. And I don't know what happened inside of the mosque afterwards.
Yeah. Both of those are so, like, very affecting.
Yeah.
In different ways, but it's incredible.
So some of this footage by the Israeli soldiers is never before seen footage.
Which you only could get because you were working with a filmmaker named Sarah Friedland, probably, right?
We essentially walked into the Palmach archive in northern Tel Aviv.
And the Palmach, can you tell people what Palmach is?
Palmach, okay. So yeah, before there was IDF, there were a bunch of Zionist militias, terrorist militias, Nili, Ha'etzel, Lehi, Palmach. And later on, these militias formed the IDF after the creation of the State of Israel. So Palmach was one of them, and they were the guys that occupied and massacred people and lived in other places throughout Palestine. So we went to their archive, and we asked permission to view the footage, to go through the footage, the raw material from a film that was made on the heroics of the Palmach soldiers that was aired on Israeli TV back in 1990, and this footage is from 1989. So I was 4 years old at the time. It wasn't us who took this footage,
right?
And I think that they just don't feel like they have anything to hide. They don't have anything to hide, you know. As my friend Tamer Nafar wrote in Haaretz after they banned our film, he said, well, there's a reason why they don't want to recognize that crime, and they talk about it as if it's something ordinary, as if there's nothing to hide, you know. If you don't recognize a crime, it means that you can keep doing it.
Yeah.
This is why Lid is such an important film. One of the reasons why I believe we ended up making an important film that is very vital to the moment. A huge crime took place in 1948, a crime against humanity, a crime against the Palestinian people. The world did not recognize that crime. And with the active help of, you know, the West, well, namely and mainly the US. And now that crime is happening again. So if you look at Gaza, the beginning of the genocide in Gaza, you would see a bunch of Israeli ministers talking about nuking Gaza, which is completely dumb, because then, you know, it's Gaza and Tel Aviv are an hour away. So if you nuke Gaza, you kind of nuke Tel Aviv too, just to show how intelligent they are, you know. But they did also talk about inflicting the second Nakba on the Palestinian people, or calling it the Nakba of 23 or 24. Which is also completely dumb, because you don't even recognize the first Nakba.
Right. They're both Nakba deniers and Nakba, like aspirers. Yeah.
Exactly. So this enables them to keep committing that crime under the watchful eye of the US and the West. And what we're seeing in northern Gaza at the moment is, I mean, we're sick of saying this is a crime against humanity. What they're doing right now is this plan created by Gora Island, an ex-Israeli general. It's called the Plan of the Generals, which is essentially to starve the population of northern Gaza and later on commit mass extermination of people as if they were rodents. We're seeing this now in Gaza. And in what world do we live in where it's okay to just kill 200, 300, 400 people a day? In what world do we live in where it's okay to kill 20,000 people. You know, I was watching this Instagram reel by Al Jazeera English 2 weeks ago, I think. They published it on their Instagram, and Katie is just essentially it's just a black screen, like a credit roll in a film, with names of people, three names in a row, all the names of the confirmed victims of the genocide in Gaza, and we're only talking about 34,000 names. The whole reel was about an hour long. Mind you, these are not all the names. You know me, Katie, I'm a pretty cynical person. I could not get past the first 2 minutes because I just couldn't. I started crying. It goes on for minutes and minutes and minutes. You see a bunch of names, and right next to them, there were also the ages. 0 years old, 0 years old, 0 years old, meaning babies. This is a baby killing machine funded by your money. You're paying for this. How are you not losing your mind over this? I mean, I live here. I live among these genocidal people who are committing these crimes against my people. I have to live. This is my new reality now. You know, when I get back to Israel, you know, I land at the airport. I take the train. I live in Haifa now, so I take the train from Lid Airport. We used to call it Lid Airport. Now they call it Ben Gurion Airport. I take the train in from the airport up to Haifa, and I sit, and I know that I'm just going to look around me, and I'm going to look at these people. A lot of them are young men, and I'm just going to keep thinking, what did these guys do in Gaza? I mean, who raped? Who murdered? Who killed babies? Who bombed homes? Who whatever? I don't know. This is our reality now. We have to live with these people. And you don't have to live with these people. All we're asking is that you stop your administration. All we're asking is that you raise awareness to the situation and just stop funding this. Trust me, it will end. Just stop supporting this, stop funding this, it will end. And as to the other stuff, you know, living with it, living in this new reality from the river to the sea, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how we cope with that. But that's another thing we need to thank Biden for, in my opinion.
What do you mean? I'm not.
This new reality, I mean, I would argue that, you know, the biggest anti-Semitic act committed over the last year and something is the carte blanche, is the just like the open check that the genocidal Joe has given Benjamin Netanyahu. Biden could have saved Israel from itself. And now he's made Israel into this pariah state. He's made Israel a genocidal state. He's made Israelis genocidal people. That was the making of Biden, you know, and Netanyahu. So I don't know how, you know, other people don't see it like that. Maybe it's because I live with Israelis and I watch their media and I'm very critical of their media. I used to have a critical TV show that they tried to take off the air just because it was me and because it was successful. So I do know how Israelis think, and I can see a couple of steps ahead sometimes, and I know that this is not going to a good place. If you send people to kill other people and then they go back to their society, they don't go back normal. They don't come back normal people, especially if they committed war crimes, especially if they killed children and women.
But isn't this a continuation? I mean, isn't like Israel was founded through genocide, right? Ethnic cleansing, genocide. There have been so many rounds of it, kind of. Is it that? Are you saying that there's something like qualitatively or quantitatively different?
Yeah, this is a genocide on steroids. You are absolutely right, Katie, to point that out. And again, going back to the film, this is exactly what we talk about in the film. This crime has been happening since 1948 to this very day. That's why we need a recognition of the Nakba, of the catastrophe of the Palestinian people. When a crime is recognized, it has a chance to stop. It stands a chance. We stand a chance of stopping it. when a crime is not recognized, when any talk of the Nakba is deemed anti-Semitic by U.S. mainstream media, by the U.S. officials, this is how can we will never be able to stop this. We will never be able to stop this unless free speech is truly allowed, and then people will have a chance of learning about the Nakba, learn about the crimes that were committed against the Palestinian people, and then have them decide for themselves.
Right.
I'm not claiming that everything I say is right, but all I want is for people to hear me and think for themselves, and then do some fact-checking themselves. I'm not claiming that everything in our film is perfect and the absolute truth. If Zionist filmmakers want to think otherwise, by all means, do another film,
Right.
make a film.
Right.
Prove me wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Right. If it's so, right.
Yeah.
Gives them an opportunity. Yeah.
Exactly.
What are you so there's this genocide that's happening, genocide on steroids, as you said. There are people who are being like blindfolded and having their hands tied and like thrown down holes. So that is at a level that you're not experiencing, obviously, but you are experiencing something, right, where you are in Haifa. Can you talk about that, this kind of increased surveillance that you feel like you're living under?
I think most Palestinians in Israel are in a state of denial. There's this new reality, and because the genocide is still ongoing, and now a Nakba in Lebanon is happening. So I live up north, and as you know, rockets and missiles and drones are flying all over us, and Iron Dome and all that, and Iranian missiles and Israeli missiles, and so it's all very stressful and hectic at the moment. So people don't know how to feel. I feel sometimes, but what I can tell you is that we live in a reality where they just banned the film, but prior to banning a film, we know that they've been targeting Palestinians for liking the wrong post, for sharing the wrong post. I'm going to just give you an example. Our actress Maisa Abdelhadi, that voices Lid in the film, a very famous, prominent Palestinian, award-winning Palestinian actress from Nazareth, i.e. Palestinian citizen of Israel, was arrested and then put in house arrest because she made comments on October 7th on her Instagram, So, get this. It's been 13 months. She's still under house arrest, unable to work. Many Palestinian singers, actors and actresses, thinkers, writers are being targeted. And at the beginning of the war, on October 7th, I texted a bunch of my friends, high-profile Palestinians, and I told them, whatever is happening, we don't know yet, but please don't post anything on the social media. I don't know what is this. And I haven't been writing, I haven't been posting anything. I think the first thing I did was this piece for Al Jazeera English in December, exposing what was going on in Israel, and I showed a couple of clips from Israeli Hebrew media where we show, where you can see essentially in Israeli studios, people threatening and intimidating Palestinians not to speak up, not to demonstrate, not to show solidarity and empathy with the people of Gaza, or else we will be shot. At the beginning of the genocide, the Israeli chief of police said that there was a ban on demonstrations. Again, the only democracy in the Middle East, right? There was a ban on demonstrations or any act of empathy and sympathy to the Palestinian people of Gaza. And if anyone wanted to sympathize with Gaza, the Israeli chief of police would take them there himself. That's what he said. I.e., this public servant, with all due respect, he's just a public servant. Chief of police is in charge of, maintaining and protecting the law, right? Openly says, I'm gonna break the law. I'm just gonna drive into Gaza. What is that? Israel is not a real state. Israel is not even a real state. How is this allowed? So this wasn't the beginning of the genocide, and I think that we're in a situation where so many Palestinians have lost their jobs. People are afraid to be out. People are afraid to leave Arab towns and Arab villages and go to Jewish Israeli cities. Fortunately, so far, we haven't seen the lynching attempts to the extent that we saw in May 21. But I think that's just because the war is still happening and people are just occupied with what's happening in Gaza and now with the northern border in Lebanon. The worrying thing about Israeli society is that, and I can, it's like, this is happening. I'm willing to bet my name on it. I mean, this is happening. There will be a civil war in Israel after the war is over. There will be. They're just like, the Israelis can't talk to each other anymore. It's become so bad. It's become so bad, and I feel that this conversation on the upcoming civil war in Israel is not really present in the discourse in America. And again, going back to that argument whether Biden is the biggest anti-Semite when it comes to when Israel. Obviously, I say it as a joke. But if you want to save Israelis from themselves, make them stop. Make them stop, because after this, they're just gonna be at each other's throats. And I think, but I think it's too late. I think it's too late. Even if the war stops tomorrow, an Israeli civil war will be happening.
But who would it be between? Because I thought there was consensus. Like, I thought that there are people who are critical of Netanyahu, but no one's really critical, except for a very small percentage. No one's critical of the force being used.
Don't forget, Katie, don't forget what was happening in Israel prior to to October 7th. All the year with the judicial coup, Netanyahu and his minions were trying to start this judicial coup, and they were successful to an extent. And then October 7th happened. That is still happening in the background. That is still happening. Netanyahu is trying to turn Israel into a full-on dictatorship. And you have the Kahanist settlers, i.e. Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, and those crazies are only interested in one thing: building the temple on the ruins of Al-Aqsa Mosque, and sending all of us to hell after they start World War III. And you have the Israeli Hasidic Jews who don't want to be drafted into the army, and you have the Israeli liberals who are against the judicial coup and are pro hostage deal, and some of them are even pro ceasefire. And you have the Bibi supporters. I mean, I think the best way to describe to an American what a Bibi supporter is, just imagine a Trump supporter that is really, really stupid. These are like, it's like a cult. So he's like a cult leader, Netanyahu. And if you talk to a Bibi supporter, it just feels like they've been brainwashed, and these people will do whatever their leader says. So I do believe that, and it's not just me saying that, a lot of Israeli scholars are starting to say this as well. A civil war within Israel is inevitable. Like, this is happening. It's just a question of whether it's within the next year or the next 2 years.
So, speaking of civil war and Netanyahu and Trump, what are your views on the upcoming U.S. election? Trump versus Kamala. Will it make a difference in terms of Palestine?
No. I think that it's like just another, like everything. I mean, to an outsider, a lot of this seems like a show, just another American show. I do believe that, at the end of the day, well, obviously, I'm simplifying things, but to some extent, the president is a temporary hire. So I don't think the U.S. policy will change over Israel-Palestine. I mean, both of them are pro-Israeli. Both of them have to answer to the AIPAC lobby. So I don't think there's going to be much of a difference. which is extremely depressing. But I do believe that if the Democratic Party at some point will have, maybe not with this election, maybe with the next election, will have a nominee that is just pro-life, man. When Americans say pro-life, why is it just about abortion? Why can't a pro-life president be like pro
actual lives,
people that were born already? How about that? Why is that not part of the discourse in America? So once you have a president like that, I'm not gonna call them a pro-Palestinian president. I'm just gonna call them a pro-life, nominee. I'm pretty sure that at least at the Democratic Party, they will get the nomination. Unless
the Dems rig it, which is not beyond possibility.
Happened before.
Yeah,
it happened before, but I don't know. It's just very I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, it's very hard for me to tell Americans, look what Kamala Harris and Joe Biden did. Don't vote for them when you have the orange creature coming up, against them. They're all just very, very bad. I'm sorry. They're all just very bad. I think they're all horrible human beings, to be honest. Yeah, I don't want to have coffees with these people. I mean,
yeah.
I would never want to do that.
I'll call it off. I was gonna set you guys up on a coffee date.
No, but I do want to have a drink with you.
Yeah, well, let's make it happen. Yeah,
let's make it happen. Yeah.
Well, last thing want to bring up is your film is obviously powerful enough to get banned, which shows it is a powerful thing, and Israel is very triggerable, and they've shut other things down, right? So like in December 2023, they shut down the Jenin Freedom Theater. Right, it was raided, it was destroyed. Some people involved in it have been arrested and detained. And I want to actually show a clip of Alana Hadid, who is a very high-profile Palestinian model activist. She's from the Hadid family. She actually
the Palestinian royal family, the Hadid.
Palestinian royal family, yeah. She actually put out a little video talking about the banning of this film.
Yeah, Alana's amazing.
Yeah. And we can fast forward, Brad, the parts of the film that she shows, so we just want to see her commentary on it.
Films are powerful. But are they dangerous? The Israeli government seems to think so. In Jaffa, also known as Tel Aviv, they shut down a screening of a film called Lid. The theater owner detained and interrogated. The film silenced. Why? Because this film, Lid, dares to challenge the narrative. It dreams of a world where the Nakba never happened. And that vision is a threat. The Israeli government labeled Lid so dangerous, so powerful, they created a new law to stop it. But what exactly are they afraid of?
Actually, let's play it. Let's play the cartoon part of it. Sorry, the animation part of it. Sorry, yeah.
سمعت من اللي قبل كيف كنت غيرت كيف احكي لهم بطلتين اهجرك مش مزح مجهز حقيقة اكتب لك مدح مبروز وصيت غضبك دبح وصاصك فيي يعيش بعشق حتى لو تخوني ومع غيري تسيب.
بدي اشوف واحد في العالم انه يطلع من الدار يومين ويجي يلاقي الدار مسكونة وانت ما تقدرش تدخل.
مش عارفة شو اللي صار فيا كل شي تغير حواليا اللي جواتي راح تبدل بجراح نفسي انا اللي بيا وعود سمعتوا كلمات املي بيموت اوقات على بالي هقفل الباب بالمفتاح اللي معك.
Lid imagines what Palestine could be if the Nakba, the mass displacement of Palestinians that happened in 1948, never happened. A Palestine without occupation. A people free to live, dream, and exist. And that is a huge threat to Israel and everything that it stands for. The Israeli government didn't just block Lid at this theater, they went further. Now any film shown there must be pre-approved by a government censorship committee. No other theater in Israel has ever been subjected to this. Why is telling this story so dangerous? Israeli government officials even went so far when speaking about this film to rename it Lod, erasing the name of the Palestinian city Lid. They erased the name of the Jewish American filmmaker who spent 9 years working on this film with a Palestinian journalist. Why? Because they fear the truth and they fear hope. Censorship is about hiding truths and challenging power. We all know that. As one of the filmmakers said, if they go this viciously after your work, it means it's vital to the moment. They banned Lid, and now its audience will grow. Films like Lid are dangerous because they expose the truth. They show us a world where everyone is free to dream, free to live, free to be without oppression. And that's a future worth fighting for. At Watermelon, we're committed to sharing the stories they don't want you to see. Stories that speak truth to power, that inspire hope, and imagine liberation. These are the stories they want to silence, but we're committed to making sure that they are heard.
All right, so nice plug for Watermelon Films, as well as for
Go Alana, go.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, you must have felt conflicted about it getting banned, right? Because obviously it means it is doing something.
We will try to screen it again. A lot of people want to try and screen it again very soon, and so most likely it will get banned again. This is going to be a very long and continuous dance between us and the Israeli government. And feeling conflicted, my initial reaction was just to laugh. Was just like, and I think the lid has been popped off.
Yeah.
Nice. So yeah, my initial reaction was just to thank the Israeli government and the Israeli Minister of Culture for banning the film, because like I told you before, now the whole world will know about it. So thanks, Mickey.
Yeah. Thanks, B. Did you say thanks, BB?
Mickey is the Israeli Minister of Culture. I will never thank. No.
Okay.
I will never thank BB.
Yeah. Well, this has been really amazing. It's such a good movie. You can't watch it yet online, right? Because you're still screening it. But tell people where they can find out more about the film and anything else that you want to make sure you tell our audience tonight.
We have a website at thenexile.com. We also have an Instagram page, Live in Exile. Also, you can follow me, ramiyunis48.com, or follow my co-director, Sarah Emma Friedland, on Instagram. And right now we just started our U.S. college tour of the East Coast. And I don't know, I don't really have anything else to say other than we have a couple of surprises coming up.
Wow.
Stay tuned, yeah.
So surprises, and you're predicting civil war.
I wanted to end on an optimistic note.
All right.
Kind of,
let's go back to the surprises then.
You screwed this up,
I'm
Katie.
sorry. We'll have to cut it. We'll have to cut this out. Yeah. But all right. I'm very excited for the film to be seen by more people. So, and I think that's it, right? We're going to end on a positive note.
I mean, yeah, somewhat positive note. I think.
Yeah. It's hard to. Yeah. How do you stay hopeful or positive in these times, or do you?
I mean, who told you I stay hopeful and positive these times?
Maybe you don't.
It's just people ask me all the time, especially now because we're doing these screenings and the Q&A afterwards and interviews, and I get asked like, so what's the solution? How do you see the future? How do you see? And my reaction is just, what solution, what future, what hope? Right now, I just want this to stop. We're in the middle of the event. We're in the middle of this nightmare. I just want it to stop. After it stops, we collect ourselves, and then we start imagining a solution or a better future or whatever. But right now, please just make it stop. This is like it's Katie, when I'm back home, and right now I'm in New York, so it feels like I kind of left this collective depression that we have back home, and I'm able to breathe. And I've been actually answering emails now and writing emails, and can you imagine? this basic thing that I couldn't do when I was back home, barely keeping it together. And it's not just me. All my friends are like that. And so right now at the moment, it is very, very hard to stay positive. And I tell you what, how could you be positive when so many children are dying?
Yeah.
It is something severely wrong with a person if they stay positive or they're in a complete state of denial while children are being obliterated. This is not the world that this is not the world we should live in.
Right.
You know? So if I do want to end up on a positive note, you know. And I think I told you this, Katie, last time I was on the show, or when I saw you at one of the screenings we had in New York. You know, I was on the phone with my mom. Last April, I was in New York. It was during the encampments. And my mom called me and she was in tears. And my mom is a very cynical person. She told me, I can't believe what I'm seeing on TV. Look what's happening in the US. I never thought to live to see that day where so many Americans would take our flag and our kufiyas that didn't belong to us anymore. Now it's a symbol for humanity. Now it's a symbol for, you know, like we said before, pro-life symbol. And just like Columbia University, UCLA, Harvard, all these institutions all of a sudden became a symbol for hope. I truly believe in the younger generation. I truly believe in that, and in the US. So if we have to end on a positive note, if we want to end on a positive note, I do want to point out these young, magnificent American students, and well, not just a lot of them are not just American, but just students at these institutions. That I know it's tiring. I mean, they fought a lot, and then the summer happened, and now we're in the new year. They fought a lot. I know this, but it's important to keep fighting because people back home were watching. And when they fight again against this, people back home will watch again.
Great. Thank you so much, Rami, and have a great night. And when we meet up and have a drink, I'll put out a photo.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you.
Documenting it. Yeah. Thank you so much for all your work, and sorry about everything that's happening.
Thank you for providing a platform, not just for me, but for everyone who wants to speak up against the genocide. This is highly important, and I really appreciate the work you've been doing.
Thank you. That's so nice to hear.
Thank you.
Okay. Have a great night. Bye. All right. That was amazing. So honored to speak to both of those guests. So upsetting what's happening. I'm going to read some super chats and then we're going to say goodbye. So let's see. Hiram says, I was told I was schizophrenic for giving the IDF power banks. I don't get it. Okay. Wadeworth, thank you so much for your super chat. Sparky, thanks for saying you love me. Wasim Bashiti, thanks for saying great work, Katie. Sparky, Israel's killed many more Americans than Iran has. Remember the USS Liberty. Yes, that's true. They are not called the terrorists, though. It's Iran that's called the terrorists. Brilliant discussion. Hope Professor Finkelstein returns to the show soon. Yeah, definitely. PragerU is actually run by a retired Israel 8200 member. That's weird. Being banned by Israel is a great plug for the film. Agree. And fun fact, 1492, the Ottoman Empire sent ships to rescue Jews from the Spanish Inquisition. Contrary to the popular belief, Muslims and Jews have not been fighting for thousands of years. Very true. Well, announcement. So next week, I'm going to be doing a live show. It's already sold out, though. It's at the People's Forum. We're going to be streaming it live, though. Right, Brad? Yes. And that is with, it's going to be amazing because it's with Rashid Khalidi, the amazing historian who's retiring from Columbia. He is the author of several books, including, it's in the other room, The 100 Years War on Palestine, which is really essential reading. Everyone I know who's read it has loved it. And another announcement is tomorrow we're streaming a debate. It's called the Free and Equal Debate. So it features people who are not allowed to debate. So it features Jill Stein and then a libertarian guy and then a guy from the Constitution Party who is an interesting character. And yeah, we're going to be streaming that and then doing some reactions to it. And Fouad Dakar, who I've had on the show before, who's a Palestinian musical theater talent and comedian, he and I will be doing that. And that will be tomorrow. I believe it's at 8:30. Let me check. Yeah, no, at 8 p.m. EST. So 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It starts at 8 p.m. And that should be interesting. And I obviously will not be endorsing many of the people on that stage.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Yeah. But
I also just wanted to mention, Katie,
that you got a nice haircut.
Kind of buried the lead there, but
oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. That I just wanted to show everybody. I got this notice. Apparently, Patreon, Apple is requiring Patreon to switch to subscription billing in order to stay in the iOS App Store. And the notice looks like this. And it's starting on November 2024. And I'm going to look further into this, but my reading of it, basically, it seems to me like this only really applies if you join Patreon through the Apple iOS store, like on the iPhone app. I don't think that it applies, if you go to Patreon online, like on your computer or something like that. And it also doesn't impact people who are already members of Patreon. But just a handy visual, basically, like in this example, if someone were to be a Patreon member for $10, then you see the breakdown currently on the top, and then the middle and bottom are basically what that is, and that big black chunk is Apple's 30% in-app fee that they charge for, like, this applies to any app. Apple charges a 30% fee. So basically, as you can see, like, the difference between joining Patreon now versus joining Patreon on November 2nd would be a difference between $10 and $14.50.
Guys, you got to do it.
So like I said, I'm going to look further into what I said about it, like whether or not it applies. I know for certain it does not apply. If you are already a Patreon supporter or joined before November 1st, this doesn't apply according to what they're saying. But I'll also look into, does it apply after November 1st if you join like on your computer, or does this only apply you know what I'm saying? Like does this only apply if you're going on your iPhone in the App Store on your phone? Is that the only place this applies? I need to look further into it, but I just wanted to let everyone know, because I mean, if you look, not to get too inside, baseball here or whatever, but like on the bottom here, what is that? Patreon processing and Patreon platform fees combined is essentially like 10%, which compared with Apple's fees or like say Google's fees is basically Patreon. The great thing about Patreon is the creators, your money, if you give $1 on Patreon, the vast majority of that goes to the creator that you actually want to be giving it to. Whereas on other platforms, if you give $1 to a creator, sometimes, whether you know it or not, other entities might be taking a giant chunk of that. That's why Patreon goes such a long way in terms of like making this program possible. So I just wanted to let everyone know and thank everyone that has already been a Patreon member. Like, this wouldn't be able to happen without you, but also to let people know about this change that looks to be coming starting in November.
Great.
Yeah.
I mean, great. Get ahead of it is what I mean. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And just wanted to show like everyone, this is everything that I know, and I'll look further into it also and let everybody know once I find out anything else.
Awesome. And okay. Bye, everyone. Thanks so much.
Okay, I'm down. no limit, man.